Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back to another episode of Rami G TV. For those of you that are new to my channel, I'm Rami G. Welcome. I read scary stories on the internet so you don't have to. So if you're into that type of stuff, please leave a like and subscribe. And if you're not, leave a comment down below telling me why not. Let's get to the point. We're going to be going over 6 of the scariest Reddit stories that I have found so far. For those of you that don't know, I also made a subreddit, and you can submit any of the stories that you might have to that subreddit and have a chance for them to come out in another YouTube video. I will leave a link to the people's stories in the description down below, just in case you want to go follow them on Reddit. Without further ado guys, roll that intro. This story was submitted by Mind of Nick, the man at the end of the street. I'm not really one to tell scary stories, let alone talk about certain dreams I've had as a child, because I don't exactly remember most of them. But this is one specific dream that reoccurred for a year straight when I was about 7 or 8 years old, which was about 12 to 13 years ago. Growing up, my house was at the top of a slope, kinda like a hill. I used to enjoy riding my bike all the way down and coming back up to my house. Until one night, when my dad went out for a cigarette, I went all the way down to the bottom of the slope. I felt like someone was staring at me from a distance. I couldn't really tell there wasn't anyone outside due to it being so late. Overall, I did manage to make my way back to the house and get ready for bed. The same night I had a dream that I rode my bike halfway to the bottom and stopped. There was a man in a black hat, long black trench coat, and didn't have a face. He was just waving at me and signaling me to come over to him. In the dream, I would always turn around and race back to the top and try to get to my house, but I never could. There was a giant metal wall that would separate me from my house before I could get in it. Not only that, but the man was already at my back with his hand on my shoulder. I would always wake up right after and swear I could see the same figure standing in my doorway looking at me. I could never find the urge to get up to my parents' room because I didn't know if it was real or not. That figure would either appear in my doorway or I could just feel him looking at me in my room. That figure would appear in my doorway or I could just feel someone looking at me in my room. Eventually I saw a post in regards to the dark figure, and one of my friends said she had something similar happen to her as well when she was younger. And she lived up the street from me when we were kids. She just never told anyone. Has anyone had a similar experience, or is it just me? This story was submitted by Dragon_Crystal. My younger brother from another life was clinging to me, causing me to have nightmares and wanted to cross over to be with me again. So this story is a true story that I wasn't supposed to hear or know about. But I happened to overhear it from my dad, whom was telling my uncle over the phone. My dad had a loud speaking voice, so it's not my fault that I overheard. Backstory. My nightmares started around middle school. I don't remember much about the dreams, but they were creepy and kept me up most of the night, causing me difficulties during school, so my parents would have me pray nightly to help me sleep. It didn't help much, and my dreams continued until after high school. Most of my uncles were shamans, and from what I've heard, so was my grandpa. He passed away when my dad was just a little boy and is reborn as my baby brother. That's what I heard. Now with the story. I didn't have class that day, and I was walking upstairs to my bedroom until I heard my dad chatting with my uncle. At first I thought it was the usual family calling to check up on us, until I heard my name being mentioned. So I sit in my younger brother's room and listen. My brothers were at school. My dad says to our uncle, yes, Dragon Crystal isn't having any more nightmares for a while, and we're happy about it. My uncle said, well, what was causing the dreams? My dad tells him that apparently I had a brother that was still clinging to me from the afterlife and wanted to cross over to reunite with me. But if he did, it would poorly affect our family. So our other uncle, a shaman, spoke with a supposed brother and told him to let go so I can rest and stop having nightmares. I heard my uncle ask if I knew about this, and my dad responded, "No, it's best if she never found out about it, or it would have turned out bad." Well, I found out about it, Dad, but I'm pretending I don't know about it. I'm sure if I ask my dad, he will flip out and make a scene about it, because he always makes a scene about anything he wants to rant about. So even now, I still don't know why my ghostly younger brother couldn't cross over, since my dad changed the topic and started talking about another haunting instead. The story was submitted by RK242. I heard my name in the middle of the night. In my home country, it's very common for residents to not turn on the AC units or central air conditioning, since electricity bills can rack up to $785 for constant use. During this particular night, there was a cool enough island breeze to keep the windows open. I fell asleep fairly easily that night, and nothing was out of the ordinary until I started to hear some rustling outside the window closest to the head of my bed. At first, I assumed it was probably one of many stray cats that roam around the neighborhood at night, but usually there was meowing. There wasn't any before, during, or after the rustling I heard. I closed my eyes and it felt as if it had been 20 minutes since I heard the rustling again, but I assumed it could be a stray dog that hangs out at the park close to my house, but there was no barking at all. My eyes drifted back to sleep for a bit longer, and then I heard the rustling again. This time it was a bit more aggressive and sounded a lot closer, like right underneath the window. I was starting to get extremely nervous, but I didn't want to scare myself before figuring out what it was causing the rustling. However, this is where it gets concerning. I'm sitting up on my bed at this point, trying not to make any noise. As I calmed down and started to fall back asleep, I heard the rustling again. And at this point, I'm freaking the hell out. And then out of the silence, clear as day, I heard a man's voice call my name. After what felt like forever, I slowly tiptoed to my window and peeked through the blinds and didn't see anyone. Checked the other windows, same thing. No one. I eventually fell asleep until the next morning without further inconvenience. Luckily, nothing like that has ever happened since that day, so I really like to keep it that way. I'd rather not hear a phantom voice calling my name. This story was submitted by Baba_2019. When I was pregnant with my son, a scary ghost apparition lady kept showing up to the end of my bed. The air would physically change and I knew she was there. Her hair looked like the texture of moss and looked wet. Her clothes were muddy up to the knee of her long-sleeved, dingy, white, dirty sleep dress. It looked to be 1800s fashion. I immediately threw the covers over my head and started to pray. I felt the air shift back to normal, as if she was gone. Fast forward to about a week later, same thing happens, except she was closer. Once again, I threw the covers over my head and prayed. Over a week goes by. I have told no one about the incident, but it's all I could think about. Once again, the air shifted and I immediately pulled the covers over my head, but I could see her move slowly to the side of my bed. I could hear her raspy breathing. I closed my eyes so tight that I saw spots. I think she was reaching out to touch my pregnant stomach because my little boy pressed himself hard up against my ribs, like he was trying to get away from her. That was it. Mess with me, okay, but mess with my unborn son, no. I threw the covers off my head. She wasn't there that I could see, but I could feel her presence, so I told her sternly, "I'm sorry, whoever you are, whatever happened to you. But this is my baby, not yours. Leave us alone." She never returned after that. The story was submitted by Lucky Reputation 398. About 12 years ago, I was doing a job as a self-employed plasterer in England. I was working in my hometown. Anyway, the house was a decent size, and I was there for a while. They bought 2 houses next door to each other to make them into one big house. Living in that house was the dad, the mom, and the daughter. One day I was working on the staircase in this house. The mom had told me she was going out, but if Emma, her daughter, came back, I can tell her that her mom stepped out to the shop and went to go get petrol and won't be long. No problem, I said. So I'm working on the stairs and I go down to the bottom of the stairs, to the kitchen, to get new water in my bucket. So I was downstairs 2 minutes most. Went back upstairs and heard someone crying. I could tell it was a girl. Now the house was originally 2 houses getting built into one, so there was 4 doors in the house. 2 front doors and 2 back doors, also, and 2 staircases linking into one big staircase. So I thought Emma had gone through the back door and went up the staircase into her room when I was downstairs. Then I heard more crying, and I heard plain as day, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Then I heard a muffled noise. Then all was quiet. Anyway, the mom had come back and asked if Emma was home. I was saying she was, and she sounded upset. Her mobile rang, and it was Emma, phoning her mom to see if she could pick her up from a friend's house. She wasn't at home after all. Mom asked me in what room I heard the crying and the voice, and when I told her, her face went white. Turns out the lady of the house hung herself in that room 2 years prior, and she left behind a young daughter. This story was submitted by C_AD6926. I won't go to my friend's basement anymore. I've been going to my friend's house, who happen to be twins. It's a pretty old 2-story house with a basement. Apparently way back when one kid that lived in that house climbed the power pole and got electrocuted and passed. Now, I don't know how true that story actually is, so the little ghost story never scared me. Well, we all used to play this game. We called it murder. It's pretty much hide and seek, but you pretend to murder the hiders when you find them, and the hiders would scream when they got caught. I loved playing this game as a kid. At a party when I was around 14 or 15, we played this game again for old time's sake. I was a murderer for this specific round, and while I was counting, I distinctly heard someone go downstairs to the basement. I remember this was a rookie move, because those stairs creaked loudly and the spots to hide were pretty limited. After I finished counting and I walked downstairs, I started to check all the normal spots that people would hide. That's when I noticed something was off. I had chills up and down my spine. It felt cold. I felt like if I was being watched. I didn't want to be down there anymore, and I turned to head back upstairs when the lights shut off and I heard the door slam shut. I started screaming bloody murder and ran up the stairs and banging on the door that got locked somehow. I was screaming as I felt something dark and sinister coming up the stairs behind me. I was screaming and crying, begging for someone to unlock the door. I heard a bunch of footsteps rushing downstairs from the upstairs and my friends' voices on the other side telling me to open the door. I was yelling back that someone locked me in and that I didn't want to play anymore. I could feel the presence behind me still, and I have never felt that scared in my life. I thought I was going to be dragged back down to the stairs with whatever was coming up behind me. When the door finally bursted open, I ran out a crying, terrified mess. I started yelling at my friends how cruel it was to lock me down there. They all looked at me like if I was crazy. They all decided to hide upstairs in the crawl space in the attic, and no one had ever been in the first floor or the basement. That only made me question the footsteps I heard go down to the basement. But what they said next made my blood run cold. The basement door locks from the inside. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed these 6 scary Reddit stories. If you have any of your own, I have a subreddit that you all can leave your scary stories in. And I will also leave a link in the description below of anybody that submits their story here. Please remember to like, share, subscribe. And until next time, guys, sweet dreams.